The older we get, the more comfortable we start to feel in our routine. And it's that comfort, the familiarity that keeps us going, right? And a part of us likes it that way. You know, what's the old saying? If it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But I think this autopilot behavior is doing more damage than good. And that's what I want to talk about today. But not only that, I also want to give you something to think about that will help you to stop letting your life passively go by. Because the biggest mistake we can make is thinking that we have all the time in the world and how we can do that or prioritize that later. A few weekends back, I met a friend of mine for lunch, and it was really great catching up with him. We talked about family, we talked about kids. We're both expecting our second child, which is really exciting. We talked about work, we talked about priorities. And about halfway through our meal, he asked me how my business was going. And this led us into a conversation about core values. And so I expressed to him how I'm doing everything I can to align my life and my work with my core values, and how I'm building my business in a way that supports that life, a life aligned with my values. And as I started to settle into my rant about core values and how my business was going, he stretched his fists across the table to meet mine. And he said, you know what? We need more people like you. And then he followed that up by saying how he's considering a career shift of his own and how he wants to go full time on his own project. Because as a dad, he also talked about how family plays a huge role in his core values. Now, to make a long story short, when I left the restaurant, there's a thought running through my mind. Most people never stop to ask themselves, what do I value? Instead, they let life pass by on autopilot. And like I said a few minutes ago, autopilot does more damage than good. And here's why I believe that. Too many of us are stuck responding to everything around us. Work, commitments, obligations, without ever pausing to ask ourselves, is this really what I want? Is this career really what I want? Is this really how I want to spend my time? Are these commitments really the things that I want to give my attention and energy to? Now, I do have to preface this by saying that we're all adults here and we have responsibilities. We have bills we have to pay. We have kids we have to take care of. So we have to use wisdom here. But at the same time, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be asking ourselves this question. Is this really what I want? Tell me if this resonates with how you feel at all. But when we're stuck in this autopilot mode, it feels like the days are blending together. We're rushing from one task to the next, reacting and responding to everything around us. And the moment we get a split second of downtime, it feels like something's missing in our life, but we can't quite figure out what that thing is, right? It's so easy for us to get caught up in the chaos of daily life, responding to everything, giving so much of ourselves to others' needs and what everyone else is expecting us to do, and putting out fires and reacting to the curveballs in life, right? It's so easy to get caught up in those things without ever pausing and thinking about what truly matters to me, what truly matters to you. But here's the truth. It's not too late to stop this pattern and pivot in a new direction. But how do we do that, right? What are the steps that we have to take to make that happen? Well, before we discuss how, I think it's important that we take a few steps back here for a moment and talk about why we are stuck in this autopilot mode without questioning the path we're on. And after some deep thinking about this, here's the conclusion that I've drawn. It often comes down to a mix of three things. There are external expectations, societal expectations. There's the fear of change, and there's a deep-seated guilt, right? Let's briefly talk about each of these. Societal expectations. We live in a world where we're told what success is supposed to look like. Success is climbing the corporate ladder. Success is buying all of these things. Success is achieving these external milestones, right? And it's easy to get caught up in this idea of success without stepping back, without asking ourselves if this aligns with what I truly want, if this aligns with my core values, right? Do you want to climb the corporate ladder? Is that something you desire to do? Why are you buying all of these things? Why are you chasing these milestones? Is this really something you want to achieve? Or is it because you want other people to look at you and say, you know what, man? Wow, you've made it. You know what, miss? You're doing your thing. I'm proud of you. You've made it. You're a boss. You're killing it right now. Keep going. What does success look like for you without the pressure, the expectations that society puts on you? The other thing I want to talk about is the fear of change. You know, I've talked about before how change is the process of life, but change is also hard. And for many of us, it's a whole lot easier for us to stay on the current path that we're on, even if it's not fulfilling, than to take that leap of faith into the unknown. And so we're wondering, okay, am I good enough? Will I make it? Will I be able to handle the shift if I do commit to this change? And because of that, we end up staying on the current path we're on, even if it feels unfulfilling. And I'll give you another example, right? This is before I decided to quit my corporate job. There were a few coworkers that I had that were familiar with my YouTube channel, were familiar with the things that I was doing outside of my responsibilities in the office. And a few of them knew that eventually I was going to make the decision to leave, to better myself, to do my own thing. A few of them encouraged it. They were supportive of it. But I remember having a very specific conversation with someone in the office. And I remember telling them how, you hear all of these motivational speeches about, take the leap of faith, jump before you're ready. And in the moment, that sounds extremely motivating. It's encouraging. It makes you believe that you can do it and you should do it. But I told them, when you're the one standing at the edge of the cliff, peeking over in front of your toes to see how far down success is, it feels completely different. It feels completely different to be standing there wondering, am I good enough? To be standing there wondering, will I fly once I jump? Right? And when you're the one standing at the edge of this cliff, there's a fear that covers you, this fear of change. Like I said, you're wondering, am I good enough? You're wondering, will I be able to handle this shift, handle the unknown, this change? And so a big part of this idea, this concept of not letting life passively go by, is overcoming your fear of change. And the way you do that is by, pivoting and then taking baby steps in a new direction. And we'll get to that in a moment. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about here quickly is this idea of guilt around prioritizing yourself. So many people feel guilty about focusing on their own needs, right? We feel like we have to sacrifice for others. And if we don't, then we'll feel selfish or undeserving of prioritizing our own time, our own needs, prioritizing our own values over all of these external demands, right? And I want to talk about this word selfish for a moment, because this is something that I think has been instilled in us since we were really young, since an early age. And it's a belief that has, not intentionally, but it's a belief that has impacted our adult life. And I'm realizing this now that I'm raising kids of my own. As kids, we're told all the time to don't be selfish, to share your toys, to help others, to give yourself to others, to support them. Don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. And to a degree, to an extent, there's some truth in that, right? You don't want to be selfish. As kids, you should share your toys. Share your toys with your siblings. Share with other kids. There's some truth in all of that. But like I said, not intentionally, but indirectly, this belief has impacted our adult life. Because when we grow up into adults, when it's time for us to prioritize ourselves, our needs, our values, we somehow start to feel selfish about that. We feel like we have to give ourselves to other people. And then we start to feel like We're always giving ourselves to others and we don't have time for ourselves anymore, right? Because we don't want to feel selfish. We don't want to be seen as selfish. And so we have to overcome this guilt of prioritizing ourselves. And we do that by reframing the way we think about guilt. And again, we'll get to that here in a moment. Now, these three factors, right? The societal expectations, the fear of change, and the guilt around prioritizing yourself, these three factors combined keep us trapped in this autopilot behavior without ever questioning, you know what? Am I really living a life that aligns with my values? And for the majority of people, the answer to that question is no. And so how do we change that? How do we start aligning our life with our core values? When I left the restaurant from having lunch with my friend, I already told you how there was this thought running through my mind. And so as I was driving home, I asked myself, okay, if someone approached me and said, how do I start aligning my life with my values? What steps do I have to take to make that shift? Tell me what to do. What steps would I give them? How would I guide them through this process without overwhelming them, without overcomplicating the process, without creating a fear of change or instilling some sort of hesitation into them because it sounds hard, it sounds complicated? What steps would I give them? And so as I was driving home, I drew up 4 simple steps that would help you, A, pivot, and B, start taking baby steps in a new direction on a path that aligns with the things that are important to you. And here are those 4 steps. Step 1, ask the question. The first step to aligning your life with your values is asking yourself, what do I value? And this sounds simple, but it's a question that so many people avoid. And the reason is because it feels uncomfortable, right? When you ask this question, you're forced to look at how you've been living your life and whether or not that aligns with what you care about. And if you realize that you've been spending the last 10, 20, 30, 40 plus years of your life doing things that don't align with what you care about, with what matters most to you, then that's a hard pill to swallow. But it's a necessary pill to swallow, right? Now, it's easy to get caught up in being busy, right? And caught up in the demands of life. Like I said, we're all adults here. We have responsibilities. We have bills we have to pay. We have kids to take care of. We're putting out fires. We're reacting to curveballs at every second, right? It's easy to get caught up in those things. It's easy to stay busy. But if we don't take the time to reflect and ask ourselves, what do I truly value? Then we're going to stay stuck in this autopilot, reacting to everything around us, but never actively nor intentionally designing our life. And so the challenge I have for you is to take some time now to reflect on what your values are, to ask yourself, what do I value? And then write down your thoughts, right? No matter how vague it may feel initially, but just write down your thoughts, write down the things that are important to you, because this is the start of your clarity journey, right? Now, if you need help, I have a core values worksheet. It's completely free. Just go to ronaldlbanks.com/values. You can download it. You can work through the prompts. It's a worksheet that has helped thousands of people already figure out what their core values are. So I encourage you to download that if you need the help. But figure out what your core values are. What's important to you? Ask the question. That's the start of your clarity journey. Step 2, reframe your guilt. Once you've identified what matters, the next step is to reframe the guilt you may feel when prioritizing your needs. Now, I've already talked about this, but I'm going to quickly reiterate it. Many of us have been taught that prioritizing ourselves is selfish. But here's the truth. Prioritizing your needs, your values, your well-being is not about taking from others. I'll say that again in case you missed it. Prioritizing your values, your well-being is not about taking from others. It's about pouring from a full cup. And when you prioritize your needs, when you align your actions with your values, hear me when I say this, you become a better partner, a better friend, a a better parent, a better professional, because you're no longer drained and disconnected from who you are, from the things that are important to you, from your values, from the things that genuinely put a smile on your face. Now, here's the exercise that I want you to try, right? I promised you that I would talk about how you're going to reframe your guilt. And here's the exercise that I want you to try. I want you to simply reframe the thoughts you have around the guilt you feel, right? And as an example, let's say you're telling yourself something like this: I'm being selfish by focusing on myself. I want you to reframe that thought to something like this: by taking care of myself, I can better show up for those I care about. Now, I want you to spend some time journaling about the guilt you feel, right? What are some of these thoughts? Write them down. Journal your way through them. Think about how you can reframe those thoughts, those beliefs, and how that's going to impact your perspective. Now, I'm a huge fan of journaling, and I'm going to encourage you to write this out, right? When you can see yourself write it out, when you can see it on paper, it really changes your perspective and how you think about things. But spend some time journaling through this. What is the guilt you feel? What are the thoughts you're having? And how can you reframe those thoughts? And how is that going to impact your perspective? Step 3, take small, meaningful actions. So now that you've identified your values and you've reframed the guilt you feel, the next step is to take action. Now, that doesn't mean you have to overhaul your entire life all in one go, right? It's about taking small, meaningful steps, right? And what this looks like is, it may mean carving out 10 minutes every morning to just reflect on the things that are important to you and to make sure your actions are aligned with that at the top of the morning. Maybe it's spending a few hours on the weekend to declutter your home and your life so you can create space for the things that matter. Maybe it's taking that first step toward a career change that aligns with your value, that feels more fulfilling. Maybe it's researching, asking questions, networking, building relationships with people in that industry, learning the skills that would make this career change feasible for you. Wherever you are on your journey, whatever steps you have to take, it's about taking one step today, another step tomorrow, and another step the day after that, right? And consistent action like this will build momentum over time, guaranteed, right? And you'll soon start to see the changes that you've been seeking in your life. You'll soon start to feel more fulfilled. And you'll no longer be living your life on autopilot, allowing it to passively go by, right? You know, this reminds me of a member who joined Clarity Lab, my membership community. And the reason they joined was because, quote, they don't want to just let life passively go by. They want to start making room for the important things in their life and living accordingly to their values, right? They're really starting to think about, okay, what is important to me? What are my goals? How can I start decluttering my life to create space for these things? You know, they've already made a significant shift in their career, and now they're focusing on the other aspects of their life. But like I said, regardless of where you are on this journey, regardless of what you're focusing on right now, it's about taking those small, meaningful actions. And like I said, consistency builds momentum, and you'll soon start to see the changes you seek. Step 4, reflect and adjust. So as I was driving home, thinking about these steps that I would share with someone if they asked me, how can I align my life with my values? I knew that the 4th step, or the final step, had to incorporate some sort of reflection, right? And so it is my encouragement to you now to incorporate or to make reflection a part of your regular routine, right? So after you've taken action, spend some time to just reflect and check in with yourself. How do you feel? Do you feel more energized, more aligned? Are you starting to notice any shifts in your mindset or your behavior? What new challenges have come up, right? Reflection like this helps you see where you're making progress and where you may need to make adjustments. And it's this ongoing process of iterating and realigning with your values and making adjustments, making decisions that is going to help you grow on this journey and build a life you love, supported by work you enjoy. Now, here's the bottom line. Stop letting life passively go by. All right. Now that you know the steps to align your life with your values, all you have to do is start. Like I said, as I was driving home from the restaurant, I knew that these steps had to be simple. If they were overwhelming or complicated in any way, then that would be an excuse for someone not to start. And so here's my challenge for you. Regardless of where you are, pick one of the 4 steps that we discussed today. Ask the question, what do I value? Reframe your guilt. Start taking small, meaningful actions, or spend some time reflecting. Just pick one of the 4. And then do whatever that step is asking you to do this week. And if you do that at the very least, that means you're taking the first step toward a life that aligns with your value, rather than living a life that is passively going by. Keep growing on your journey, my friend, and keep learning. And always remember to stay true to you. See you next time. Peace.